Settle down. All right, moving on to our next session. Cyber crimes hitting the corporate sector. I think during the keynote, there were mentions about a lot of corporate sector actually been hit by some kind of threat. Otherwise, we've seen, I think Samir was actually talking about LinkedIn and Target examples. But here we have a discussion on how you can rethink the incident handling in your organization. To moderate the session, I would like to call upon on stage Mr. Pratap Reddy, IPS, Additional Director General of Police CID for Karnataka Police. Mr. Reddy, if you could come on stage. You know, funny incident with Mr. Reddy, I've been with NASSCOM for the past 3 years and I'm meeting Mr. Reddy for the first time and he actually asked me who I am when it comes to NASSCOM because he knows all our colleagues and I had to say, sir, I've been with NASSCOM for the past 3 years in Bengaluru, in your own city. So it's a pleasure to meet you today, Mr. Reddy. I would like to invite on stage his co-panelist, Mr. Harikishore Kusmakar, IPS and additional CP from Kolkata Police. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Mr. Krishna Shastri Pendyala, Executive Director, Forensic Services for PwC. Sir, if you could join us. And last, but of course not the least, Minu Chandra, Lead Digital Crimes Unit from Microsoft. Minu, if you could join us. And Minu was saying that she is the balancer when it comes to gender diversity out here. So anyways, a fantastic panel in front of you. And Mr. Reddy, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to chair this panel. I have a fantastic 3 individuals who joined me here, so that makes my job much easier and also covers up all the shortcomings as a chair I may have. So to that extent, I am quite happy to go with my panel. And to begin with, possibly most of you read about the profiles of this panel who are sitting here. And Meenu brings in with her the Microsoft corporate perspectives and also being a lawyer, attorney herself. So she would be able to dwell upon some of the issues that the topic highlighted upon. Mr. Krishna Shastri, maybe I can call him as one of the founders of cyber forensics in the Indian law enforcement fraternity. He established the cyber forensics division with the Government of India Ministry of Home Affairs, and he headed it for quite some time. And he has been the go-to man for various law enforcement and also various national level incidents that have happened, and he has been the go-to man whenever the issues arose with respect to forensics. Hari Kusumakar is one of our younger colleagues in IPS, and he has been with the National Police Academy in Hyderabad, which trains the Indian Police Service officers. And he was instrumental in trying to create an institution where the law enforcement professionals can be networked and the skill sets of the law enforcement professionals can be upgraded so that India as a big destination for IT industry has enough capacities internally to deal with the law enforcement and the breach incidents and investigations. And finally, I've been with the police, and on sabbatical, I worked with the industry body, NASSCOM, as a Senior Director of Cybersecurity for about 3 years. And I had the opportunity to look at from the industry side and also from the law enforcement side. And we have some critical areas and gaps that needs to be covered, particularly when we are talking about cyber crimes and crimes hitting the corporate sector. I think the biggest area that we need to, each of us need to appreciate is the gray areas that need to be covered are the most important aspects of investigations or incident response systems or breach notifications, whatever you call it as. Let me begin with by sharing a couple of anecdotal examples like what we are trying to look at it. All of us keep speaking about the cyber being global in nature. And when we respond to cyber crimes, the legislation is local in nature. So the legislations that are local in nature need to catch up with technology investigations which are cross-boundary and international. So we have a huge gap area that needs to be covered, and we have problems there. As investigators, like let me share with an example which we dealt in Bangalore police recently, last year. We have a Twitter handle called Shami Witness. This Shami Witness handle was being run by an individual, an youngster from Bangalore who was working in an IT industry company, who never traveled anywhere outside of India, who happens to be originally from West Bengal, working in an IT industry in Bangalore, enamored by the ISIS. And he created this Twitter handle, and he kept on tweeting and posting things about the ISIS war that is going on in the region of Syria and Iraq. He was so authentic in his approach in posting these details that many of the reputed international newspaper correspondents or his followers, they thought that this is one of those persons who is in fact posting the details of the ISIS war from the barracks in Syria and Iraq. So authentic were his postings. And surprisingly, when he had more than about 18,000 followers, majority of them were Western followers. And how did he come to the notice of the law enforcement? He did not come to the notice of the law enforcement in India because he is not doing anything with us. And he came to the notice of UK law enforcement because he was radicalizing the youth in United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom police started working on investigating the whereabouts, and subsequently the rest is history, which is reported in the newspapers. Now, these are the kinds of challenges which in cyber domain we are facing, and as law enforcement and corporates, we are trying to handle. Even within the corporate environment also, the insider threat, and let me tell you, I think Meenu is here, and she would be able to speak regarding those aspects of it, and how much is the internal issues that needs to be dwelt upon. Now, similarly, the investigations, be it from corporate perspective or law enforcement perspective, the investigations require a lot of forensic support and forensic tools, and the challenges in trying to understand and develop those forensic tools. Krishna Shastri will bring in his perspectives and trying to see like what are the challenges that we are seeing. And finally, at the end of the day, when a major breach or major incident happens, it is the law enforcement which needs to come out and respond to those situations, and how the law enforcement is trying to do, and Hari would be able to bring it. Maybe let me start with Meenu, this discussion. Meenu, would you be able to share with the audience regarding, like, you have the largest installed OS base around the world, and as organizations, we have tremendous insights into what is happening into it, and how Microsoft sees it, and extending the Microsoft vision and trying to see as an overall IT sector and corporate sector, how do we see these cyber crimes and the threats that are emerging, and how are we responding to that?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. As you said, we do have quite a huge operating system install base, of course, which is now being also amalgamated by other operating systems in the market. What we see, and one of the huge insights that we have almost 3 billion user authentications having touched for just the authentication when they update every month. So that's the kind of volume that we are receiving. And then I have got many data points, but I'm going to take only 3. With the Windows 10 release, we had almost 1 million Windows devices being updated. So whoever was updating is getting better, secure OS environment. And then from an email perspective, because we have a huge exchange, we are looking at roughly 200 billion emails which are scanned for malware and spams, only from a malware threat intelligence perspective every month. So this is the kind of volume we are looking at. And that does give us a huge responsibility along with insight, if I would put it that way. We are looking at security from a point of view of from the endpoint all the way to the data center, so across the board, because any small chink in the security will mean a breach. So that's how we are looking at it. And one of our, as we started looking at security, which is roughly now 15 years back, when we started our journey on the SDL, we started not only looking at just protecting or responding, remediation, but we also started looking at how do we detect early on, because one of the key things is to detect it quickly before you actually have a breach or a risk which emanates into further loss. So our strategy has been and is now being developed to be, we assume that we will be breached, and we have to be, how quickly can we remediate that breach and respond to that attack is how we prepare ourselves. So we call it more of readiness ability than just protection and response. And in that sense, what I represent here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is a very unique part of Microsoft, which is called the Digital Crime Unit. So all of us in the security, all the CISOs or the security experts would agree that any organization, when it gets attacked, its first response is to remediate and protect itself, like any other war situation. What we started doing in Microsoft was, within the legal department, as we call it, we had a huge amount of lawyers and investigators coupled with big data analytics who were looking at how do we really go one step further. So yes, we protected ourselves, we've got remediation, we've recovered whatever loss. But as an enterprise or as an organization, we started dwelling into who is behind this attack, who are the criminals behind it. And that's where our journey began almost roughly 6 years back, where as a group of lawyers, investigators, and analytics, we came together as a digital crime unit and said, we will go after the criminals who are attacking our infrastructure. And in that sense, we are around 100 of us, around 30 countries, because this is a global issue. And thankfully, we have a global footprint, we have global teams. And what we are doing is to look at patterns. So once my CDOC, which is the Cyber Defense Operations Center, like any other SOC, has done its task of protecting the infrastructure, we then go post facto into what's been the pattern, where it was from an investigative perspective, and then work with law enforcement agencies like yours to really go after the malware breaches. So we are looking more from reducing digital risk, and in that context, without taking too much of the time, what we are doing is we are forming partnerships with law enforcement agencies, taking credible evidence and information on botnets, where they're emanating from, and working as technical experts, because Microsoft DCU is not the law enforcer. So taking technical expertise to work with the law enforcement agencies to actually go and physically help the agencies to take down a botnet, create the sinkholes, get the command and control seizure, and I can happily report we'd go all the way to prosecution. So the last prosecution that has been resulted in a sentence in US, which was the Ramnet botnet takedown. So this is really what is unique about DCU, where we not only are doing it for ourselves, but we believe this is our mission to create a safer digital world and to make it harder for the criminals to keep coming back. Yeah.
Creating a safer digital world. So while the theme looks very promising and attractive to make statements, but over the years, or rather even today when all of us sit here, this is not true with corporate environment. That is what I have seen at a personal level, being a law enforcement officer and being with NASSCOM also. The corporates are worried about the reputation risk when an incident gets reported outside and when they try to respond. So to a large extent, the companies which see breaches and incidents internally are extremely reluctant to notify and ensure that these things are like come into public domain. So they try to address those issues, and while they try to address those issues, many of the smaller companies and some of the larger companies don't have the internal capacities to address them and allow the problem to grow. And this is like, I was sharing with my panelists, and many of you would have heard about the civil aviation security model, where in civil aviation, security is not a differentiator for business. In civil aviation, security is taken for granted, and rest, everything is business differentiator for an airline. So when it comes to that kind of questions, what are the CISOs, the biggest dilemma the CISOs and the face, and what are those challenges they see when they work internal to the corporate environments? Ms. Shastri, would you like to share some of your thoughts about it?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Reddy, and good evening to everyone. After the recent attacks that has happened to the banks that was given in the public domain, the fact of the day is, it is the CISOs have realized that 100% network security is a myth, it can never be a reality. If that is the case, the biggest dilemma before every CISO is the current security framework they are having, protect, detect, and respond. Is it correct or wrong? That's the biggest dilemma every CISO today is facing it. I kept the protection systems I detected but responded. But the point of the day, if you look at it, is the first point. The average time to detect a security incident is something around 200 plus days, as reported by various security vendors. The business downtime is very, very high. The cost of investigation has become very high. The cost of cleaning has become even very, very high. If you look at the Sony incident and Anthem incidents, if you look at it. So is the current security framework, the CISOs which are following generally, protect, detect, respond, is it correct? Or going for something, detect, respond, and protect is the best security framework? So that is one of the biggest dilemma every CISO is facing. Because in and out, if you look at it, more than 6 lakhs of viruses are coming into the market every day. If that is the type of statistics, out of which maybe 5 to 6% maybe APT attacks are unknown vulnerabilities. So the current security framework which they are having is not at all correct. The second dilemma is in many of the security operations centers, the SOC is maintained by one company. The second incident response is maintained by another company, and the forensic is maintained by another third company. So they're all working in silos. By the time the SOC has identified a threat and reported to the incident response and gave it to the forensics, they are losing something around, on an average, 20 to 25 days. Now, is it the current security operations center model, is it correct? The answer is no. We require to have an integrated security operations centers where the SOC and incident response and digital forensics should work together as a single team. Then only you can reduce the impact of any security incident. That's where the dilemma for many of the CISOs is the current SOC model they are establishing is currently secure enough or not. And third, if you look at is, I did almost a large number of investigations, but 90 to 95% of the investigations when forensic team was called, in a lot of places, remember, we are not in a position to backtrack the source of attack. The reason why this is they don't have any idea something about what type of log should be captured, how long it should be retained, and what format should be retained, and what are the regulatory and legal requirements to keep a particular logs. So in many investigations, they say, yes, this firewall is installed by so-and-so company, this IDS is installed by so-and-so IPS. What it is capturing, really, we don't have much idea about it. So the point of the day, if you look at is, what are the various logs they should capture? And if any security incident happens, whether really they are forensically ready or not. So the need of the hour is to have something called forensic readiness assessment to backtrack and identify the source of attack, exactly where it got the malware infected or the source of attack. So these are the three biggest dilemmas many of the CISOs are currently facing.
Taking off from Krishna Shastri, let me share with you what Hari is going to share. In traditional crime investigation models, what we have the standard operating procedures for investigating the crimes. Like if it is a murder case, you have those standard operating procedure, what you are looking for, what kind of evidences and what kind of line of investigation and all that. When it came to investigating cyber offenses, this is all post 2000 when after the Information Technology Act was enacted in India and it has been made cognizable offense and criminal offenses have been made. As I previously shared, each time when a crime gets reported, police are trying to see as if like they try to learn like how to investigate this cyber breach because there are no used case scenarios earlier available in many of those things. That is what Hari Kusmaka tried to address while being part of the National Police Academy and the kind of work he has done. I request Hari to share some of those challenges and issues that he has seen and how he approached it.
Thank you, sir. I would like to start my talk with a question. How many of you heard about a place called Jamtada? So it is less than 3%, I may say so, or less than 5%. If you ask any law enforcement officer of the country right now, this is the place where the maximum number of cyber criminals are in India are originating from. So what I'm trying to indicate here is that we all perceive that cybercrime is a high-tech crime done by very sophisticated, well-educated and technologically qualified people, which is not correct. In fact, they run training modules, which they charge anything 5,000 to 7,000 rupees for such kind of crime. They are running actually kind of quota industry. And this is where the challenge is. In fact, I keep talking to all my colleagues. Since all of you, or rather most of you from corporate background, many of you may be aware about the cyber security concept. We as a police officer would like to be more grounded, where we need to keep focusing on Jamtada kind of incidents and scenarios. And this Jamtada, if you it'll go a little further, it like the trend says, like the latest trend is that BPO fraud. A good number of BPOs from Noida area has been raided by Triveni Singh, Dr. Triveni Singh. He is a kind of champion in this field. I think he may be a BPO expert, if I may say so. And but the trend is not only Noida. So recent was what Thane, you might have heard about. In Calcutta, we have seen similar case where actually the information came from Germany. So as long as Jamtada kind of people are calling Indians, it is still okay. Because sooner or later, somebody from Kerala or somewhere will come to us and tell us that so-and-so people are calling from so-and-so place. But the problem is much more acute when the area of operation is somewhere outside the country. And we know about Germany because they have come to us, they filed FIR, we arrested, now those people are, fortunately, they are still in jail, they have not got bail. And they are getting prosecuted properly. And I think few more similar incident is on the pipeline. They're coming from, again, some other European country. And these are just indication. So even BPO, if we consider also, like BPO people also are one of the least paid people in IT sector, but they are a potential source of crime. And as sir was saying, the corporates are not coming forward. In this case, they have come to us. In fact, one of the case actually recorded in the complaint of Wipro. So other case was similar case because most of the back office are in India. So we have used data in terms of BPO or similar sector where back office data is actually maintained or is in India and people are giving services. So this also becomes a potential threat of misuse, and that is what has happened in these cases. So in fact, and these are the symptoms. And at the same time, when we start investigating, like all of us know that only identity on internet is the IP. But in such cases, we have to go to service provider, maybe Facebook or all the popular who are mainly located in outside country, and getting information from them is difficult for multiple regions. One is the cross-border, different national jurisdiction. The second is the different laws. They may be having different laws altogether, which, I mean, that is the biggest hurdle we face. Now, the second hurdle we are facing internally here is somebody from telecom sector here may be able to understand this, what I'm talking about. something called natting. Now, I think IPv6 framework adaptation of IPv6 came in 2012 in India, I believe. And we are still very slow. We are still managing with IPv4, most of the corporates in India. When we get IPDR from service provider, we get one public IP, which is actually shared with sometimes with thousands of private IP by this communication or MSPs or all these data service provider. And when we ask, that is the only identity. When we ask, they say, ki, no, this is your data. Now dig out your suspect. Now it becomes quite challenging. I mean, we don't have any way, or whatever way is there, it's not a foolproof, and it is a real challenge. When I start talking to my service provider people, in fact, they were also not aware that this is happening, because everybody is concerned about their own area of operation. Like I am concerned about natting. There may be many other issues involved other. And when educated them, they still said, okay, sir, we'll get back to our technical team in Delhi and get back to you. And which is the real problem. And it is one such problem. There are many more such problem. And I'm not repeating that every case is different. And earlier, police still is a state subject, supposed to be dealing with local criminals. And all of a sudden, our area of operation has become worldwide. So it is a real challenge.
After listening to some of these pointers from the panelists, like what I would like to listen from is possibly the solution lies that one is enhancing the awareness component among the users and the citizens who are beneficiaries of various services. And particularly last 1 month, what we are seeing in India is, apart from various critiques of various things, the huge rollout in financial services sector that is going to happen because of the emphasis on cashless transactions that are going to happen, and how the user awareness and even for that matter, the corporate awareness and how to improve securities is one area which I would like one of my panelists to deal with. Second issue which I would like, in the second part of the discussion, I would like to request Mr. Shastri is regarding how do we approach to solve some of these issues whenever incident breach happens, how are we going to address this forensically? Third, Hari, I would like to deal with regarding the capacity building. Meenu, would you like to share with the audience regarding the awareness component? Because I think we see a huge issue, because when the JAM Trinity, if whoever is from all of us would be Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, that which is being rolled out and which is going to grow in huge number with almost like 1,000 million subscribers in the mobile space and more than almost touching 250 to 75 Jandan accounts that are being there, and where the banks, the backbone of the banks and the service providers and solution providers who are sitting here and the software companies, and then on the other side is huge number of Indians who are making use of it. So how is it that you see this, the awareness component working on it? So next about 3-4 minutes,
Sure,
if you
sir.
can share.
Yeah. So as I talked about what DCU is doing, one of the things that in the last 2 years we started focusing on India was a lot about the awareness levels, and banking sector was the first to focus on for obvious reason, because that was the first to be targeted as well. And I think what we can do, and I'm going to share what we have done in the context of what I've learned from other countries and tried to bring it here, is that there needs to be a strong sectoral partnership, first of all, where the sector, for example, if you take the banking sectors, banks, of course, are hesitating there's no clear mandate, so they hesitate in disclosing breaches, incidents, and they usually would have a very confidential conversation with their security provider. What I saw in the US is that you have the FSI SAC, which is almost 200 global banks actually coming in a very structured manner, sharing threat intelligence, just threat intelligence about malware and risks on the internet. And that's a model which we learned from, because FSI SAC was one of the entities that came to Microsoft DCU roughly 4 years back to go and take down a financial botnet. And that's how they knew they had this huge information about a financial botnet, which was going into millions of dollars of loss for customers and the banks. And that was one of the pioneering example of how partnerships can, take this whole bull by its horn. And in that sense, what we have done is we've created a broader platform which we call as a Digital Crime Consortium now. It's been active for 5-6 years roughly. And this is a global community that Microsoft has led to create, where law enforcement agencies across the world, banks, CISOs, CIOs, and any security experts, including ethical hackers, come together in a closed-door, 5-day sessions where they really discuss threadbare what they are seeing in their environment, what can work, what hasn't worked, and I'm sure there are many more such consortiums. But the essence of it is we all have to come together. And for example, we've partnered with various CERTs in these botnet takedown, and we are closely working with CERT India, and many points CERT India was involved in some of these operations. So it is about the banking sector in India. When we interacted with them, they were in a closed-door conversation. They were very open because we were enabling them with information awareness. But I can still see we have a lot to go where banks talk to each other and share. They might be having a one-to-one conversation as CISO to CISO, but we really need to have a structured way of bringing intelligence together and working on it.
Maybe one key takeaway would be like creating a platform for information sharing and anonymizing the information and trying to identify the threats. So possibly one of the aims and objectives of these kind of events that are Annual Information Security Summit and the NASSCOM and DSCI, even earlier when I was part of it, is like these industry bodies are trying to create those kind of platforms, and if at all, if they can be scaled up. What we haven't seen is in past so many years, despite these attempts, scaling up these initiatives and ensuring that these platforms and bring in the law enforcement, corporates, and key technical backbone providers and the governments and legislative bodies together and trying to share the information. I think that is one that scaling up is not happening. Now, while the scaling up at the desired level may not be there, but definitely the trends and attempts have been there. But one challenge both the corporates and law enforcement see is when these incidents do get reported, you don't have enough tools to fight and diagnose and do the post-mortem analysis of this. So, Krishna Sastry, would you like to share with us, like how do we go about it? You have seen formerly as part of the law enforcement and presently advising various corporates from your consulting firm. So how do we go about it and try to see that, mitigate these risks and quickly identify the threats?
So the first point is my observation, how to mitigate these incidents is the critical component of information security cyber life cycle. Something is missing called incident response and digital forensics. They're assessing what are the security risks, they're designing the security policies, framework, they're deploying it, they're managing it, monitoring it. But they're well aware today, at the end of the day, some security incident is going to happen. If a security incident happens, really how to mitigate it, how to eradicate it, how to stop that reoccurrence of the same unit, what are the lessons you have learned based on that, how better you can have a security assessment. I don't think any organization is really looking. Because unless you will not include the incident response and forensic as an integral part of the cyber security life cycle, we can't combat the network security incidents. That's the first point. The second and foremost is here, lack of security tools. Almost, I was in this domain for more than 2 decades. I have not found much, remember, the difference what I have seen in 1990s and today. Forensic, digital forensic means simply going with a box, imaging a drive, remember, recovering the data out of which some log parsing tools are available with that, or something, remember, the Windows artifacts identification. And to some extent to doing something called the dynamic analysis of the malware and also static analysis. But today, if you look at it, when you are having a sandbox where malwares, etc., is doing a dynamic analysis has become a very, very tough task because they are entering into sleeper mode for quite a long time. So what is the need of the hour is you should have very good network forensic tools with us. We should have malware analysis tools with us. Unless we don't have that tools with us, it is not possible to go ahead with the digital forensics. And what currently we are having is a very, very small tools, etc., for only forensic imaging and analyzing to some extent. And how to integrate these tools with the existing SIM tools. That is where the importance lies. Because if you want to mitigate the impact of any incident, the SIM tool should be combined with that of, remember, the forensic tools. That's where SIM plus I would like to call it, like many vendors are really calling it. So to the SIM tool, security incident event management tools, coupled with the digital forensic is the one that is going to. Really, I have seen recently, the Google has come out with a very, very beautiful protocol, Google Rapid Responder. It's a very good tool, really it is. If any security incident happens, pushing the agent to the machine, getting the RAM data to identify it, remember, in a very short span of time, what are the processes that are getting running on the system, identifying where it got impacted, what registry files it got changed. So unless you will not have, remember, to a SIM tool, adding an incident response tool, I don't think it is very easy to mitigate this type of incidents.
Hari, even after we do various things, like the industry keeps on coming with a lot of innovations and technology, disruptive technologies keep taking over the marketplace. And before the law enforcement realizes that the technologies, like when it started with social media, be it financial services or whatever. Now, what is your vision taking forward and ensuring that the law enforcement keeps pace with this, and how do we address these problems?
One thing which I learned in NPA during my 5 years stint there, in fact, Krishna Sastry was the one who used to come there and train us. And I was simply attending his sessions. He used to come and go. At that time, he was in CFSL Hyderabad. So what I realized later on that that when we talk about this digital forensic thing, it has a different meaning for different people. If I think from law enforcement perspective, and my aim is to prosecute people with a credible evidence acceptable to the court as per the law of the land. The other people, maybe corporate or other agency, may not be looking at a crime from the same angle. So initially I was, and that is how I started learning myself. I thought it will be easy, but then I got it the hard way. And the later I realized that there is no way other than developing our own people. There is no ready-made people available outside. So just because the uniqueness of our requirement, law enforcement requirement. And then we started some training module at a lower scale in NPA for senior police officers. And then, in fact, my predecessor gave this concept, which I took forward. And we set up a center called NDCRTC, National Digital Crime Resource and Training Center. The name is long, but in a short, it's a basically dedicated training center for law enforcement people. And as I said earlier, that for us, cybersecurity comes later. This forensics comes first, because we have to prosecute people. We have to prove that somebody has done this crime. So for that, we need special skill related to forensics. So as long as we were dependent on vendors, we were not knowing the subject, it was much more difficult to imagine what kind of evidences one can get. Ultimately, tool is a tool. It cannot replace a human being behind the tool. So always has to be, the human element has to be more important than the tool. And that is where we started focusing on basics concepts. So if I had to deal with the problem of natting, I need to understand what natting is first. And as a law enforcement, a police officer, we need a lot of small things, basic things, with a lot of clarity, because these are the basic foundation of investigation. Something like when we call out to talk about CDR, call data record, before that, we need to understand how this GSM network work. What is the concept of cell? What is the tower concept? How one number latch on from one tower to another tower? And this becomes difficult because many people know how to use different CDR software, but very few people are aware actually the basic concept. And once you clear about the concept, you can, I mean, sky is the limit for you. And since every case is different, I mean, you can use the concept and keep investigating different cases. And that is what we did. We started designing courses with the help of Mr. Krishna Sastry and some other people who were coming from outside. And over a period of time, now we sent a proposal to DAITY, which is now MAITY, and we got a funding for 2 years as a project because they cannot fund it endlessly. And with this, we selected some non-policemen from technology background. As again, to my surprise, I thought when I am giving an ad, I'll get a ready-made people who will be able to conduct my training from day one, which never happened. Vinay is here. Vinay is smiling. In fact, he is one of those guys who joined us in NPA, and now he is doing an outstanding job. We took some time, 3 to 4, 5 months time to reorient themselves to our requirement, and then it became smooth, and now people are much appreciating our module. And this is one initiative which was a very small initiative. So far we have trained about 2,000 officers in the last 1.5 years. But I can say that here the number is not important, the quality of training is more important. But whatever I am training or telling people, people should absorb it. And fortunately, MHA has agreed to continue it. And my successor is here, Vimal is here. And he's taking it forward, and I'm very happy that it will continue even after it left NPA. And over and above this thing, MHA also coming up with some capacity building in state forensic science labs. And they have recently set up a committee. They have worked on a project where they are assisting state FSLs with some tools. I hope they give equal focus on manpower also, and training, ultimately, people will be using. So overall, scenario is in right direction, but it all depends how fast and how quickly we take it to the kind of requirement which is actually on the ground, which is actually really very, very challenging.
Thank you, Hari. No, I think we are almost running short of time, but I would like to hear from the audience. Like we would have time to take a couple of questions. But before that, let me conclude to say that from the panelist perspective and also from the perspective where many of us have seen both the industry side and the law enforcement side and the legislative parts at the policy making side. There are enough initiatives that are happening everywhere, be it capacity building, be it legislation, be it forensics tool development, where CDAC is really doing an outstanding job from government perspective, and a lot of private corporate sectors are doing. And the corporates are doing quite a bit of internal training and awareness building capacity. But I think what we see is we need to scale these up quickly, and also to see that the capacities are built enough so that tomorrow we are not taken by surprise by any major incident. So major incident is one threat which keeps each one of us awake, be it the corporates who are sitting here and any one of us in law enforcement who are sitting here. I think any cybersecurity breach or the next big crime keeps us awake. So if the audience would like to share any of their thoughts or questions to the panelists, and you are most welcome, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ankur. My question is to Hari. You spoke
Can
about...
you stand up and just identify your name so just for the...
Sure, my name is Ankur. My question is to Hari. So you spoke about IPDR. So is there a way that police department verifies IPDR before taking an action? The context around my question is, in 2010, a Bangalore techie was picked up by Pune police overnight for posting an offensive post about Bal Thackeray, because Airtel gave the wrong IPDR about that customer. And it took 21 days for Airtel to realize the mistake, and after 21 days, that guy was released from Yerwada jail. So,
So, we learned the hard way. I think the answer is, a simple answer is the calibrating the time, because the IPDR comes in UTC and we have to convert it to IST. So, that is what I was mentioning. If the people are aware of this nuance and they don't fall, they get into pressure and overreact. So, we are learning hard way.
The gentleman here has a question. If the mic could just come here. Oh, okay.
Good evening. My name is Srikanth. I'm a police officer from Kerala. Now, the biggest challenge we are facing now is that a lot of mails regarding email abuse, Facebook abuse, these things are coming to our cyber cell and cyber police station. What we are doing is we are sending mail to Google and Facebook, but they are saying that because of we don't have the MLAT, Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, or letter rogatory, it is not possible to give the details to you. So in most of the case, the investigation comes to an end in that reply. 2-3 years back, we sent a letter rogatory to Middle East. I think it is in Dubai. Facebook abuse was happened to one of our previous chief minister. So we sent a letter rogatory to Dubai. At that time, we prepared it with the help of an Arab professor, and we prepared 10 copies of a big document, and we sent to Dubai. Finally, what happened was they sent the reply that there is no details we collected. We got from Dubai. That's the answer we got from that country. Now it is a big challenge we are facing. What kind of method you are using in your states?
Anyway, on behalf of the panel, let me just address this. I think this is the same challenge world over everybody is facing, and as I was mentioning at the outset, the legislations are local and the services are global. So the originating jurisdiction law applies when it comes to sharing of details, and so if the mail server is located in a particular country, the law of that geography is applicable to those servers and service providers. And so governments are trying to work and overcome these problems, but I don't know how sooner, but it's a like what you call it as ongoing work that is happening. But in emergent cases of terrorism and life under threat, we have expeditious processes where the MLAT and letter rogatory route is not required. But all others, this time-consuming exercise is still there. I don't see any quick end to it. So, but governments are working to reduce the time frame that is required for it.
One last question from
Hi, my name is Jitesh Kamath. I think Hari mentioned the challenges around the skill gap that is in the law enforcement around forensics. So mine was a more curious question with two parts to it. One was we hear about joint military exercises on the war front, or the physical war front. So are there any initiatives on the cyber front where you work with either your counterparts in other states or across the border on cyber skill training? And the second is, you mentioned corporates come to law enforcement, we need them to prosecute. So has this been a one-way street, or have you also had corporates reach out and help you in the training, in the upskilling?
First part, maybe possibly, like all of us underwent that capacity building and exchange of joint exercises and training programs around the world. And in fact, many of us have been participants, and many of us have been trainers to other countries as well. And particularly, Krishna Sastry has been a Interpol certified trainer who has been traveling around the world and imparting training. All of us have been part of various schemes. So this exchange of expertise and sharing of expertise, training of trainers has been an ongoing exercise that is happening. And possibly for corporates perspective, would you like to comment on what he said? Is it a one-way street kind of situation, or?
I can speak on behalf of Microsoft. So when Hari mentioned the BPO, the call center fraud, and Microsoft has had that issue, we very quickly realized that we needed to enable our law enforcement agencies and officers in India. So we started partnering quickly with the law enforcement in terms of training. So we've done a couple of regional workshops. We continue to, if and whenever needed, we'd continue to work with the relevant law enforcement agency working on a case, giving them technical expertise. Our experts sometimes fly down if they're not in India. In the DCU work that I just spoke about, we are the technical experts for law enforcement taking down botnets. So as far as Microsoft is concerned, it's a two-way traffic. And really, we value that partnership because it's not possible for anybody to do this alone. Microsoft can't do it alone as well.
Just let me add here one point. Almost the forensics trainings, if you look at it, mostly it's vendor-driven trainings. That is an unfortunate thing. That is my observation is. But I felt very happy when I came to know yesterday that DSCI has taken initiative to provide some one-day workshop on malware analysis here. We require such type of, remember, incident handling procedures, incident coordinations, resolutions, how to solve it, malware analysis. If a vendor-neutral based trainings, if you provide it, that is going to solve any of our problems. That's what I want to.
Same thing I was highlighting. In fact, Mr. Samidat is here. When we started training on mobile forensics, in fact, or so far, since we developed our own resource, we were totally dependent on outsider. And fortunately, he had one of the best trainer for mobile forensics. Again, it is not vendor specific. Fortunately, they are the one who actually dealing with the tools. So they also develop the basic concept also. I am again coming back to basics. Tools will always be kind of secondary for me, though it is the other way around in general. I realize in most of the time that whenever the vendor is coming to us, they actually not very sure what exactly we are looking for. We want very customized module and let me tell you, we are a police officer first. We are not a technocrats. We require a bit of everything, a bit of it. We understand, we need to understand mobile phone functioning, we need to understand IP concept, we need to understand digital forensics, and there's so many things. CDR, tower dump analysis, there's so many things, and that is where, and that is actually, my realization is that this domain is still not available in private sector, means with one people. It may be in different silos. How to bring 5 people together and customize a training, that again a big challenge. So easier thing is develop our own capacity. That is what we are trying to do. And again, this effort is always with people who are in the, wherever they're in government, mostly they're in private because they are the one who are bringing technology from outside, selling it to us. So they are the first one to get interaction with the technology. But it is already there. I mean, maybe it may be improved with more interaction among each other.
All right, I think our time's up. But Mr. Reddy, any final words or anything?
Sure. Towards the end of the day, being very patient audience, I think that has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. A wonderful panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Thank you, leaders, for taking time off and being part of the summit. Thank you so much.